Okay, we're 1 minute over. Good morning, EPH conference. Good morning, friends, colleagues here in Helsinki. I'm Natasha Azzopardi Muscat, a former president of European Public Health Association, today director for health systems at WHO's Euro Regional Office. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to be able to be here for this important plenary. Why? Because we're going to talk about two topics that are very dear to my heart: mental health and public health, and we're bringing them together. Over the next hour, we are going to talk about how mental health has become a public health issue and what this means for us as a public health community. And we're going to have a specific focus on mental health and well-being of young people. And therefore, it's really a pleasure for me to be co-moderating this plenary today with Sophie Eicher, who is from EUPHAnxt. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm really excited and honored to be co-moderating this panel today on behalf of EUPHAnxt and representing the young generation. This is a very big stage, so please excuse if I'm a bit nervous. So for today's panel, we do not only have a great group of panelists, but we would also like to invite you, the audience, to actively participate in today's discussion. And for that, I'm really thankful to my colleagues, Cassie Redlick and Emilia Aragon de Leon, who not only have set up this whole session, but also prepared a Slido that we might see on the screen in just a second, where you can participate in the discussion. You're able to submit questions and comments to the panelists, and please indicate by clicking on Add a Label from which panelists you want to hear on your question. You have also the chance to engage in the discussion by liking and upvoting questions, and we will be monitoring the Slido, and by upvoting and liking the questions, we will see which topics are most important to you in the audience. And towards the end of the session, we'll have time to then take a couple of the questions in the chat to pose to our panelists. And in this way, we're all engaged together in this discussion.
Thank you, Sophie. So please take your phones out, and anything that you put in there, we are going to take away. And without further ado, I would now like to invite to the podium my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Ledia Lazëri. Ledia is the regional advisor for mental health, leading the what I call small but mighty mental health team at WHO Euro. And last June, we had this really important event which was made possible, as is today's plenary, through our partnership and support from the European Commission. I'm sure you heard yesterday also Sandra Galina referring to mental health in her opening. And in Paris, we adopted an outcome statement on mental health in all policies. And Ledia is going to tell you about this and more, and the work we are doing in WHO Euro. Over to you, Ledia.
Thank you, dear Natasha. Thank you, Sophie. And thank you to the audience for your interest in mental health in this session and in dedicating your time to mental health in all policies. It is a privilege and an honor for me today, and a special moment for being able to share with you the outcomes of this process about mainstreaming mental health in all policies that at WHO Europe we have undertaken, thanks to the collaboration with the European Commission. So this is the title of my presentation, and the picture there shows you the ministers of many countries, many European countries, that gathered in Paris, hosted by jointly by WHO Europe and the Ministry of Health and Access to Care of France. So you'll see there, many of you will recognize your ministers, and it was a huge achievement. for the reasons I will briefly mention. So you see that we are talking about this collaboration with the European Union that has encouraged us to work in addressing mental health challenges in the 27 EU member states, Iceland and Norway. And it is more than encouraging, I stand corrected. It has enabled us, has allowed us to use resources wisely, capturing the political commitment of each member state. In order to understand where are we going, we first started to try to get what are the priorities, what do we understand from what countries are doing in terms of priorities. We wanted to explore barriers, we wanted to promote enablers. The QR code there leads you to this publication that is about the mental health systems capacity survey in European Union member states, Iceland and Norway. We had 100% response rate, so the answers are pretty reliable. The most frequently cited priority areas in mental health, as reported from our member states, are the following, and I would like to draw attention on, there should be a highlight of the four areas, the four more prioritized areas, namely diversification of mental health care offer, through community-based care, mental health promotion, and certainly at EUPHA this is very important here, capacity improvement, and suicide prevention. Those were the four most frequently cited priority areas. And then when it comes to enablers of policy implementation, try to see here the four first enablers bring us exactly to where we are here. Because first of all, 11 countries talked about the need, the mechanisms for coordination and cooperation in place. So it means that where those mechanisms are in place, this enables policy implementation. The second is high level of community cooperation and interaction between different levels in the community, but also different sectors. The third is strong buy-in of mental health sector stakeholders, and I hope you all would see yourselves into that third enabler. And the fourth is strong leadership and prioritization in government. And for many of you who work either in ministries of health or in policy bodies, you would realize how important it is to have your ministers or your sector leads involved and moving forward, championing mental health within the governments. Now, a snapshot of where we are. So the legend there for the colors shows that the green color is countries that have both put that particular area in policy and also have implemented it. The yellow color is countries that have put it in policy but haven't implemented it. And the orange and red area tells us that it is in policy but not implemented or not implemented at all. So while we are very, very happy to have the green countries, we are also concerned to see that in almost all areas, with exception to the first one, the overwhelming majority of our 29 countries under this survey are not doing well in terms of putting those areas in policy and following with implementation. And this goes even in areas such as specialized mental health services to be delivered at the community level. Many countries like here, our host country in Finland, would think this is for granted, but we still have countries in our region where this has not either started or it is not yet a reality in full national coverage. I'm not going to read them all, but I want to draw your attention on the color of the map that shows us how much we still have to do. Then, when it comes to promotion and prevention, and this is where we speak the same language, most of you are public health workers, and you see that even in areas such as suicide prevention, where we have a very, very clear evidence base that tells us where are the effective interventions for population-based suicide prevention, even there, we are not doing well. Only 8 out of 29 countries have been able to put suicide suicide prevention in policy and implement that. While the rest of the countries, 21 countries, have a patchy implementation, either patchy policy representation of suicide prevention or patchy implementation or no implementation and no policy at all. So this needs to make us think that even areas that are well evidenced for being effective still we have a long way to go for countries to embrace those policies and those evidences. So then you see, then the process, how have we gone through up to the convening countries for multi-sectoral dialogue? You saw, first I talked about the evidence on policy. So through the survey that I mentioned and through developing country profiles, we were able to engage then. So we first built the evidence, and with that evidence, we went to each country to talk about the situation in their country and talk about how we could help them into improving policy implementation or policy making or other areas. So we had 22 countries with which we engaged into bilateral policy dialogues, with some countries more than once, and we had more than 200 stakeholders. It is a very important number because it means that more than 200 representatives of policy making in those countries attended those policy dialogues. And as a key themes from the dialogues are two. One was embedding mental health in all policies. And I want to evoke here the quote from a very well empowered mental health, public health lead in a European country that told us at the end of the policy dialogue, we know what we need to do, but we don't have the ear of the Ministry of Finance. And this was echoed by many more policy dialogues that told us of the importance of talking to the Finance Ministry, of talking to the Education Ministry, to the social sector, to the employment, to labor, to agriculture. And then the second point was the need to focus and to continue with transforming mental health systems. So I hope you can see here how we are now bringing together two streams. One is mental health systems with focus on service delivery, and the other is embedding mental health in all policies with a focus to public health work. And I want to evoke what Natasha was saying. This was the point where mental health, traditional mental health work, met the public health, and this is how we went together and called for countries to convene in a multi-sectoral dialogue at the European level, when we had in Paris the high-level conference on mental health in all policies in June this year. This is a picture from the conference. You would see the ministers that are there represent various sectors. For instance, I can see from Hungary, we had the State Secretary for Innovation and Demographics. So the conference was truly, truly intersectoral. We also had, this is a snapshot, we had more than 260 participants from 31 countries, 30 persons with lived experience of mental health conditions. And this was, I want to make sure that it is well registered, well recorded, that this conference was designed in strong collaboration as a co-creation with persons with lived experience, because we cannot go back to a paternalistic approach where we, the experts, tell people who live with mental disorders what's best for them. They have to be part of that dialogue, and this conference embodied that. We had more than 20 high-level officials from the sectors that you see. In addition to health, we had education, we had agriculture, employment, social, justice, housing, transport, innovation, and digital technology. And it was a very refreshing and a lot of innovative angles to approach mental health in all policies. And as I mentioned, it was co-organized with the French Ministry of Health. Those are the key themes. I know that I'm running out of time. The key themes emerging from conference. There is a deficit in cross-sectoral governance mechanisms to translate policy into practice. Local action is identified as the primary engine. We need to focus on social and structural determinants. We need to adopt a life course approach from childhood to old age. We need to focus on mental health of children and adolescents that seem to be particularly vulnerable to increasing complex digital world, and then we need to grow consensus that digital determinants of health must be addressed through policy. This is the outcome statement. I don't need to read it. You have the QR code, but it is very empowering, very inspiring about how everybody comes together around mental health. And last but not least, I want to share with you this the process, how we reached into, how did we prepare the ground, worked with our member states, had a consensus about the need to embed mental health in all policies, and along that way, we also developed those tools that are available at your disposal for furthering the dialogues in your countries, either at national, regional, or local level. And with that, I am very, very thankful for your attention, and thank you, Natasha, for giving us the space.
Thank you very much, Ledia. That was an amazing tour de force, bringing together the work. If you want to learn more, come to our stand and our colleagues will tell you. The emphasis on children and adolescents. 2 weeks ago at the Regional Committee, we adopted a strategy for child and adolescent health, covering many areas, but the single most voted area as a concern across the 53 member states was indeed mental health, and specifically mental health in the digital era. And now it's really my pleasure to introduce Professor Silja Kosola. She's a professor of adolescent medicine at the University of Helsinki and a research director at the Western Uusimaa Wellbeing Services County. So dear Silja, the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to hearing insights from your valuable research and work in this area. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation. No one will deny the many benefits of digital services that we just heard of, the internet and everything that it provides. The access to information for us all, the connections with peers, and many health applications as well. However, when we're talking about young people, we have to bear in mind the context of their developing brains. When a young person already looks on the outside as a grown-up, they're in fact not. There is a great growth spurt going on inside in their brains. There happens apoptosis, which means the organized death of those little gray cells that Hercule Poirot so much loved. But on the same time, there's an increase in myelin, which increases the connections and efficiency of signal transmission within the brain. It's also important to understand the direction of development, because the first areas in the brain to mature are involving their emotions. And only later on, in the third decade of life, comes the control in the prefrontal cortex. This is one reason why young people are so susceptible to addictions, known from nicotine, alcohol, gaming, and also to mental health conditions. Development takes time. It can't be hurried. We just have to be patient and let them do their thing. Now, the social media that we knew when it first emerged was quite different. Now it's beginning to be as gray and grim as the weather outside today. The old social media provided us with more connections with our friends, mine across the Atlantic, for instance. It provided new opportunities for creativity for young people. But both of these sides have actually suffered tremendously since the invention of algorithms that are constantly being developed to be more and more addictive. Because the companies have only one single motion, a very strong economic incentive to keep people engaged, and the more people are there, the more they gain. They actually utilize several mechanisms from psychology and the science of addiction. The endless feeds, the no triggers that tell you to stop use. There's more videos, which first became in TikTok and then also into Instagram Reels and so on. Social comparisons and the constant pressure to be available to your friends. They also put a lot of weight on content that triggers emotions, and unfortunately, many of these emotions are negative. To also remember that Meta has left fact-checking to users. They don't do it themselves anymore. This is all depicted in the Finnish school health promotion study, which is conducted every other year in the whole country. The bar groups on the left, 4 of them, depict the situation in boys, ages 10 to 11, 14 to 15, and then in high school and vocational education at roughly age 17 years. There's no big difference between the years 2017 to 2023. And this is in line with previous studies from gaming. These are roughly the percentages of young males who have problems with gaming behavior. The bars on the right, the 4 bar groups on the right, depict the situation in girls. And what you see is a tremendous rise in girls aged 14 to 15 who have excessive internet use. In 2017, it was 7%, and now we're close to 15%. And what's even more alarming, in the last survey conducted this spring, 48%, that's nearly a half of girls aged 14 to 15, said that they were online even when they do not want to be. Our colleagues Livingstone and Stoilova have summarized the potential threats of social media under the 4 C's seen here. Content means the traditional violence and sexual content that is inappropriate to young people, but also self-harm inducting content, eating disorder promotion, and as well-meaning as it may be, also the contagion of different types of mental health symptoms. These are really prevalent on TikTok, Instagram, but also WhatsApp that introduce channels for young people to see. In contact, we have the predators that hunt for young people and also organized crime. Snapchat is the most prevalent channel for this. Conduct refers to bullying, stalking, hate speech, and so on, which are more easy to engage in when you don't actually see the person in front of you. Cyberbullying is roughly 4 times more prevalent than any school bullying ever. Contract, then, means the use of data that you give the platform right to when you become a user, and also the marketing context that young people are facing. Now, we do have age limits for movies, for driving, for actually being the direct target of marketing. So is age 13 really old enough to handle all of this that's going on in the social media nowadays? Apparently not. We have a lot of evidence on the different types of harms that young people face because of social media. Speech development in young children is delayed, sleep is deprived, attention span is shortened, impulsivity increases. Young people have vision problems, posture problems, and less physical activity than they need. As to direct mental health consequences, there's an increase in anxiety and depressive symptoms, self-harm, eating disorders, and school burnout. They also suffer from lower self-esteem and identity problems. And to worsen this all, they feel lonelier than they did before using social media. They're subject to bullying, sexual harassment, and mis and disinformation that we heard of yesterday as well. So what should we do? I say we go back to the basics. The Mental Health Finland organization has an excellent hand depicting the different elements that promote mental health in human beings, and I'm sorry to say there's nothing new here. However, I want you to do a little exercise with me. Put your hand up like this. And then think, if a young person isn't sleeping enough, they lose the thumb, which is our most important finger. It allows the movement that we need. If they don't have hobbies and creativity anymore because it's all eaten up by the digital area, they're losing another finger. They're not engaged in physical activity anymore. They've got 2 fingers left. Their nutrition tends to suffer because they're so tired and engaged in other areas. And then we offer them therapy, so we're actually showing them the finger. I have another very simple exercise. Despite the advances of technology, we still have 24 hours in each day. It can be made into a simple 4x6 scheme. If you color in sleep, do not cut away from that. You color in the average length of a school day plus some time for homework. No time for digital entertainment during that time. You color in the time it takes you to get to school and back, plus a little bit of physical exercise in the green, and then the interactions with your family over meals and so on during the day. You're actually left with about 2 hours that you can decide what you want to do. Is there a skill you want to learn? Is there something else you want to do? So, one more exercise for you. I hope that all the ones who believe in setting an age limit, not a very drastic ban on social media, but just a simple age limit of 15 in the footsteps of Denmark, to just rise up. Are we ready? Thank you.
Thank you.
An engaging introduction and overview on the topic. Now I would like to invite the rest of our panelists up on stage. We start with Marta Puciłowska-Schielmann. She is the director at the Center for Responsible Digital Citizenship in Poland. Welcome. Then we have next, we have Ian Power. He is Special Advisor on Mental Health to the Minister in Ireland, and he's an Associate Adjunct Professor at the University College of Dublin. Welcome, Ian. We also have with us today Marie Volker. She is the Managing Director at the Center for Digital Psychiatry in the region of southern Denmark. Welcome, Marie. And last but not least, we have Ewout van Ginneken. He is the director at the European Observatory on Health Systems and Policies. Thank you for being with us here. Okay, and with that, we start the panel discussion. And my first question goes to you, Marta. With the growing influence of digital determinants on mental health, this is something that you're actively addressing in Poland through the work of your institute, right? At your institute, you promote responsible digital citizenship, and you help young people to build skills in practicing good digital hygiene. Could you please explain to us, what does it mean to be a responsible digital citizen?
I'll check if it works. It works. So we understand the digital citizenship as something that has 2 legs. And first leg is that we are all responsible to create a safer internet, a safer digital space. But the second leg that we are trying to promote within the foundation I work in is establishing a healthy relationship with digital technology nowadays. And we are trying to do it through changing the narrative in Polish media, above all, and trying to make a shift and take the focal point from the fears and bans, the ban on the mobile phones, which is very important, and we should talk about that, but to make it more about how to establish this healthy relationship nowadays. Because technology is something that is here to stay, and it basically cuts through almost every element of our lives. And that takes me to point number 2, that is academia and education. We strongly cooperate with Warsaw Medical University, and together we created digital hygiene concept that underlies basically everything that we do in our educational work. And digital hygiene, as we understand it, are health-protecting behaviors while we use new technologies, screen devices, and internet. And it's at the heart of the research that we do with the university, trying to monitor the digital hygiene of adult Polish citizens, and we issue a report every 2 years on that, because we strongly believe that the main problem of education of children are adults. And then we also make it a focal point of our educational programs that we run at schools. And basically, we address what we do to teachers and parents, because we believe we need to educate those two groups and make them be on the same page. Then what we are trying to do is also to break the bubble. And in March this year, we published a report, Internet of Children. And it was only possible because we received data from 2 private companies, research companies, that normally provide data to the marketers, publishers, media agencies. They monitor the activity of Polish citizens online, but they gave us data on children 7 up to 18 years old. So we could do something good together because they felt that they really have a social responsibility on that. And we invited a committee, a state committee on counteracting sexual abuse of minors, and we did it together. So we could show that cooperation on very different sectors is really possible. And then, last but not least, the school, or rather school community, because we strongly believe that the community at school means students, teachers, and parents, the triada, understood as parents being inside, not outside of school. And this is very important. It's simple, but it's very difficult. And we are trying to educate those two groups to make them understand that this small community is a very strong factor, protective factor for the mental health of young people. And a small ecosystem that unites all the adults around a child that has a name and the last name, and it's there. And it's also a good response to the solitude of parents nowadays. If they treat school as a place that they can come and share and learn, we can go back to the community of adults that will really try to make a change. So for us, it's changing the ecosystem, it's changing the language, and it's inviting all the possible actors in many bubbles to cooperate in order to make more healthy digital habits for everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta. Thank you for sticking to time. And thank you to Poland for really having put this issue on the agenda during its presidency. Another country who has been working very closely with WHO is Ireland, and we're very grateful, Ian, that you were able to join this panel. You have extensive experience working with young people, involving them as advocates. But we know that this can also be challenging. So can you share some of the experiences as to why we should do this, what are the rewards, but also some of the pitfalls to avoid?
100%. Thank you for the question. Up until March of this year, I spent 11 years as CEO of Spun Out, which is Ireland's youth information and support platform that's by young people, for young people. All of the work of Spun Out is led and informed by young people's participation. And I think it's really important because as a result, all of the services that we provided, but the advocacy that we performed felt authentic, and it was effective, and it met young people where they were, and often it is in the online realm. And I think that's really important. There's obviously the risks to identify, but there's also the opportunities for connection and also accessing support. I think government, kind of maybe in the stage around 2015 started to realize the benefits of engaging with young people. We all know that lived experience enhances any policies that we produce because it makes them more effective, it makes them more real. And so they came to partner with us, I think somewhat trepidatiously initially, but once they experienced the benefits of doing so, I think built confidence and built experience and knowledge in how to do it. Young people's participation in policy making, it's challenging because you have to be willing to listen, you have to be willing to actually act, and that demonstrates authenticity to young people, and authenticity is incredibly important if you're to win the confidence of young people in terms of what you're trying to do. I think in the context of mental health, it's really important to reflect what young people are telling us, which is that sometimes the conversation can be patronizing because they're not involved. I think there's a dominant narrative sometimes that young people just aren't resilient enough, when actually young people are really experiencing major challenges in having their basic needs met, from a public health kind of perspective even. And then also they're navigating on, kind of brand new challenges, as Silja described, in terms of, trying to regulate themselves in a systemically kind of digitally compulsive world. And I think that is something that young people are really grappling with, and I don't believe that we yet are kind of coming and meeting them where they are. What I would say is that we've really good experience of engaging. I was talking to some colleagues here who were in the room this morning, probably more organically than systemically in terms of the involvement of young people in policy making. There's one really good example at the moment in terms of our online task force, which is looking to support young people and develop policies that kind of regulate, but also educate and bring young people together. And crucially, they were in the room when that policy and that kind of report is being developed. And I think that that's really important. Ultimately, I think the message that I would send to any government who's involving young people in policy making is that implementation is your demonstration that you listened. And I think that's really, really important, that we have the implementation structures to deliver and thus show that we actually care. And I think that is something that I think is crucial to involving young people and anybody in policy making from a lived experience perspective. Just to kind of give some examples in an Irish context, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had done, just prior to the pandemic, a piece of work with the Department of Children and Youth around having 4,000 young voices included in the development of the LGBT+ youth strategy. That experience gave that department confidence that when COVID first hit, they came to us and said, we need to hear the voices of young people. So much policy, so many serious decisions are being made that young people are not necessarily being involved in. Over 2,000 young people participated in that exercise, and they told us about how important school was to them, how important college was to them in terms of being able to access their social support structures, their friends. And ultimately, after that, government really took seriously any measures that they were taking to close schools, and really kind of understood, and it was really important that the Minister for Children listened to those voices at that moment. So ultimately, I think my message is get young people involved in the solutions that you're designing to make them effective, and to show young people that you care.
Thank you, Ian, for these very inspiring words and elaborating on all the amazing work that's being done in Ireland. Congratulations to that. Marie, I want to move to you now, because I think there's an elephant in the room when we talk about digital determinants and mental health. Today and also yesterday, we've heard a lot about the risks and harms associated with digital technologies and youth mental health. But we also know that technologies bring incredible opportunities to facilitate connection, to promote positive mental health, and also to increase the reach and acceptability of mental health interventions within the existing health systems. So, Marie, I would like to ask you, what benefits do you see arising from investing in digital mental health tools and programs? And do you maybe have even an example of how we can use digital technologies to implement and scale mental health promotion?
Yes, I do. Well, social media, of course, is grim and grey, as you said, Silja, and as you pointed out. And digital mental health services for young people do indeed also carry risks, and they are very important to address, but they also present transformative potential for bridging the demand to access a gap that we are struggling with in Denmark and in most of the world. So the benefits of investing in digital mental health services such as mobile apps, digital platforms, youth digital health platforms, and digital CBT programs include increased accessibility and reach. So digital tools, they can overcome traditional barriers that we see in access to mental health care, waiting times, social stigma, regional inequities in access to services. And also, some young people find online services more approachable than in-person services. So digital mental health services enable mental health promotion, prevention, and early intervention. And in Denmark, we have MindHelper, which is our national online youth mental health platform offering young people evidence-based information, self-help tools, and mental health navigation for life problems. And this platform has been freely available to young people across Denmark for the past 6 years. And it's a high-volume service. We have approximately 100,000 users per month, unique users per month. So from a health system perspective, once developed digital health interventions can be delivered at scale with minimal cost. So they can be embedded responsibly in schools, in workplaces, and in primary care services. So this allows for stepped care models where low-intensity digital support is available, freeing up clinician time to focus on young people with complex needs. Also, from a system perspective, so aggregated, anonymized data from digital tools can help identify emerging trends in mental health and identify effective strategies, so informing timely responses. We have a growing body of research actually demonstrating that digital mental health is effective in addressing and preventing mental health problems in young people. But less is known about the factors that contribute to successful uptake, implementation, and sustainability in real-world contexts. So, to me, successful implementation of digital mental health interventions has been inconsistent due to various factors, and some of them are challenges faced when transitioning from research to practice. So barriers include lack of leadership, lack of prioritization, lack of practitioner training, and lack of and a lot of professional concerns. So to realize the potential, collaboration and partnerships between public health organizations, voluntary civil society organizations, and private sectors are extremely necessary. So moving forward, we need to collaborate with young people, as you just pointed out so eloquently, Ian, and also young people and those who support them in the design, in the development, and implementation of digital mental health interventions. So co-designing digital youth with young people and the people around them is crucial. Also, attention to sustainability during implementation is important. So policymakers and funders, they need to make sure that funding does not end when the research project is completed. So in conclusion, investing in digital mental health is not about replacing human touch, it's about extending it. So digital tools can make mental health more accessible, personalized, preventative, and scalable. And when designed collaboratively with young people and evaluated rigorously and implemented sustainably, it can help shift systems from a reactive approach to a much more proactive mental health promotion at population scale.
Thank you very much, Mari. And actually, this is a great example of the way in which a good practice at local and regional level sometimes can also then be taken up at the national level, and we hope that, who knows, maybe other countries may be inspired, having heard Mari too. And now we come to our final speaker, Ewout van Ginniken, who is the director of the European Observatory, who at some point was meant to be co-moderating this panel with me until we were encouraged to bring young people in. And Ewout, ever the gentleman, stepped aside, but I have to credit him with having introduced us to Silja and bringing Silja in. That was his thing. Ewout, 20 years ago, I was around, admittedly, here, when Finland had its presidency and really put health and all policies on the agenda, and the Observatory had this fantastic publication on health in all policies. Today, now we are talking about mental health in all policies. But what I would like to hear from you is, if we think about what has happened in the past 2 decades, what has worked, what hasn't worked, from the general learnings of health in all policies? Because we are hearing, again, we want to engage with economy, with finance, with other sectors. Can you share some of your insights from the work that the Observatory has been doing in this area?
Yeah. No, happy to, of course, and especially on this subject, which is such an important one. And we also worked earlier, or last year actually, on a policy brief that was about how to reach most vulnerable children. And that is, of course, a lot of it is about mental health as well. And what we found there also by talking to policymakers was that, yes, there still are these silos because it's such a fragmented landscape wherever you look. I mean, you look at the provision side, it's all scattered over healthcare, mental health, communities, social care, schools, housing. So how do you bring that all together? And perhaps they don't talk enough to each other, and they are not put in the opportunity to talk to each other, or sometimes say, but that's not our responsibility. So we had one very simple message coming out, said, put the kids at the center. Put them at the center, and then from there you start to fix and see what is necessary. I think that was a simple, but of course a very important lesson. Also the financing side is of course fragmented, and one that we need to address. Health, social care, etc. Again, maybe pointing at each other from who is responsible for what, no coordination. So how do you address that? And then also, how do you reach the children who need it most, who have faced the highest barriers? So really, that is another one you need to address as policymakers. I think that the problem is that I think many policymakers are still unaware, even now, even if they're not taken by the argument, let's do it for kids, because that is one that brings people to the room. We had several examples. If it's about children, people want to talk. So that's a good thing. But even if they don't want to talk then, and you're trying to convince financial interests, you can make the point that more than half of lifetime mental health conditions have their onset in youth. And it's not just that they will have bad mental health later, but also bad physical health, loss of productivity, less educational attainment, and so forth. So the knock-on effects are gigantic. And these are arguments that people working in the finance department are willing to listen to. Really, the need also to do this upstream, also because we are facing shortages wherever we look in our health systems and other systems. So we need to tackle this early, otherwise we cannot deal with it upstream. So that's another argument that helps with the health system, health ministers, they will be receptive to that. What is missing perhaps is, are we providing the right data as a research community? Do we need to build better economic arguments to convince policymakers? But also, how do we work together with them? And what I feel is really the way forward for us is to work in communities of practice, where we are very closely working, as we have now in some projects for the European Commission for SG reform, where we work together directly with policymakers, implementers, academia, and all interested parties to solve problems. I think that is a good way forward, where also we are responsive to the needs that the policymakers have, and not just our research-driven questions, which are fine, but we want to, of course, have an impact. I mean, I'm assuming you all want to have an impact and not just a paper in a nice journal. Some people are wired that way. I hope we are not. So these are just some of the thoughts I have on this, and well, happy to discuss more and how we actually get there together. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you, Eva. Yes, thank you for sharing your perspective on that, and also for giving us some ideas on how to move forward to further advance mental health in all policies. We have had a lot of questions in the chat, and I'm really happy to see that you're so interested in this topic. One topic that has come up a couple of times is the topic of who should be responsible for keeping young people and children safe in the online digital world. People commented that there's a lot of responsibility placed on parents and the children themselves, while the industry or the tech companies are not held to account. So we know this is a challenge, and we've published a policy brief on this topic. But how do we address this balance between empowering the general public and also regulating industry? Maybe Marie, could you answer, or could you share your thoughts on this? Marta, sorry, could you share your thoughts on this question?
I would say everyone, because we need all of us. And I think we need to, that's the advocacy that we do, trying to make the platforms responsible. We advocate for the legislation, but at the same time, I think that internet is really here to stay. And we need something that will be sustainable, that we can hold on, that will let us be with technology today and tomorrow. So I think we need to raise our children to critical thinking. We need to raise our children to conversations, real conversations, and to be with them and to really prepare them to take what they meet online, because the online world is a world without regulation. So I think that we are all necessary.
Anyone else would like to comment?
I would, yes, thank you. Yes, we need everyone. However, it is too much to ask from these young people that they take on the responsibility themselves. We can teach them critical thinking about how to behave in traffic, but we still don't give a 13-year-old keys to their car. They're not ready. It's the same thing with, at least with social media. So I wouldn't ban all of digital areas, not the whole internet, but the social media that we have nowadays is not for children. We need parents, yes, but we also know that not all families have the same resources, the same availability to protect the children. If my colleagues and I go to speak at a school to the parents, it's always the same parents there. The ones who actually need the message are absent. That's why we need the laws. That's why we have the rights of the child. That's why we have consumer laws to protect the young people who cannot have this responsibility themselves.
Having said that, it seems as though through the chat a number have asked, are there other elements that we can bring in apart from these age restrictions? I know that, for example, Silja, you referred to the good old types of social media. Ian, in your interactions with young people, I'm sure that this comes through also, that they are finding some benefits. Is there a way that we can kind of say, this is absolutely a no-no, but we actually encourage the production of this kind of package, bearing in mind always the time, the day, 24 hours, and the importance to take a public health perspective and encourage physical activity, sports, and other things. I don't know, Ian, do you want to have a go at that?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I think, again, sometimes when young people are not in the conversation, we can talk in kind of reductive terms about their experiences, but actually the online world is not necessarily a difference to them. They don't necessarily demark their online from their offline world. It's just one world. And I think for young people, online presents an opportunity to create a sense of connection and belonging for, you know, for example, LGBTQ plus young people who may not necessarily be out to their friends or their family yet. And so I think, yes, there are things that we can do. I think it's very much structural. Again, the burden shouldn't be placed on young people and their parents, but there are things that regulators can enforce. And so one of the things, we have just established a regulator in Ireland, Commission Naman, the Media Commission. So it's taking in broadcast media, but also online and digital services. And in fact, it's a regulator for a lot of European countries, for the European Union in many areas under the Digital Services Act and other directives. And there are things, for example, in terms of age assurance, right? So all of these platforms are developing all of these fantastic tools, you know, and nudges, you know, even on different platforms to disrupt kind of endless consumption. But they're not effective because we can't implement them because we don't know what actual age the young people are on some of these platforms. And there are really good, effective tools that don't conflict with civil liberties that we could mandate these companies to use in order to ascertain the actual and correct age of young people so that these safety features can be implemented. But ultimately, I think, you know, the profit incentive was described by Silja really well earlier, and safety by design and young people's right to participate by design in a safe way is crucial to ensuring that young people have this safe space. And then it's about supporting parents to help young people develop healthy habits and to disrupt kind of some of the unhealthy patterns that we're developing. And that's all of us in this room as well. You know, we're all tied to our phones and we have to learn how to disrupt that compulsivity.
So I think the next question we got from the audience is really big. We have about 1,600 researchers in this room, and a lot of people want to know from the panel what are the most pressing evidence gaps that should be addressed by the work that all of the audience and we are doing. Maybe Marie, what would you say?
The evidence...
The most pressing evidence gaps that public health can be addressing.
Yes, I think, in my area of work, we need, of course, to increase the evidence base, and we need to know more about how young people engage with digital mental health services and how they integrate them into their daily lives. And this knowledge is important in order to improve digital mental health services, to address what's important to young people, and that's why the endeavor to co-design is so important. I think that's our most pressing evidence need.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we do have this audience here. So if anyone, I think we have time for a final take-home message. You've all been so disciplined, so we can go with a final take-home message from all of you. We've got this audience out here of researchers and public health workers. Please take 30 seconds to give your last message to this great audience we have.
In the name of public health, there has also been an excellent study involving young people from several different countries. And the young people are ready to pay to leave social media if everyone else does. That's how you tackle fear of missing out. Thank you.
So addressing the fear of missing out, I would like us all, starting with us adults, to be proud of missing out and to be proud that we can leave the social media aside and come back to the human contact.
I think for me, it's simple. Involve young people, listen to what their experiences are, and listen to what they believe would be the real solutions to the challenges that they're facing.
And for me, I think it will be to continue with a nuanced perspective on, of course, addressing the harms of social media, but also being curious about the potential of digital tools addressing mental health. So keeping a nuanced view, a balanced view.
For me, it's really about reaching and taking care of vulnerable people. And that's something that we need to do to fight inequality that we're seeing. And I think it's very strong also in mental health. For me, that's the key issue that we need to address, and that needs proactive reaching out to the people who need it most.
And with that, I would like to close today's panel discussion. First of all, I would love to thank the audience. Thank you for engaging and participating. All the comments and questions in the Slido will be collected and will inform future discussions on the topic of mental health and all policies to promote youth mental health. I thank all our panelists for sharing your knowledge, your perspective, and I'll hand over to Natasha.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Ledia. And if you do have any other questions, please come and visit us at the stand. Our colleague, Cassie, who was one of the authors of the policy brief, can answer your more detailed questions. Thank you. Thank you.